Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News focusing on the search for MH370. I'm Jeffrey Thomas and delighted to say once again joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Germany. Good morning, Richard.
And good afternoon, Jeffrey.
Now today's episode is called The FBI and MH370. Now before we get into this episode, I'd just like to make a statement, and that is this subject, as have the other subjects we've dealt with, they're important and they're sensitive. And I just want to give you a note of caution. We have noticed every now and then someone posts a comment that is nasty and disrespectful, either to us or to someone else who's making a comment. These comments will be deleted. And in serious cases, the person responsible may also be removed. So please keep it respectful. Now, the FBI and MH370. The FBI has been involved in the investigation into MH370 since the 8th of March 2014. The FBI does not publish its findings, but several things are publicly known about its involvement in this very important investigation. So Richard, perhaps you can tell us, what does the FBI know about MH370?
Yeah, what we know for sure is they were asked to run a check on the crew and passenger list. A number of other security organizations were also asked. And we also know for sure the FBI were asked to assist in the analysis of Captain Sahari Shah's home flight simulator. We're showing a picture of that flight simulator. In 2023, Victor Yunello made a Freedom of Information request to the FBI, and he published the letter he got back from the FBI and on his website. The subject of the letter was Shah, Sahari Ahmed, in brackets, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 pilot. The FBI declined the request on the grounds that there was an ongoing investigation. We're showing an extract from that letter. So the FBI state, and I quote, they have completed its search for records subject to the Freedom of Information Privacy Act that are responsive to the request. The material requested is located in an investigative file, which is exempt from disclosure. Basically, they're not saying anything.
Yes, indeed. But didn't the French authorities also seek FBI for information?
Yes, they did. The French also have an ongoing investigation into hijacking and manslaughter. And in 2018, the French police traveled to the US. They met with Boeing and were given information under a confidentiality agreement. But the planned meeting with the FBI apparently didn't take place. And a guy called Ghislain Vatrelus, who lost his wife and two children on MH370, a French national, stated in an interview that the FBI was not being helpful and only gave them information on the pilot's home flight simulator that they already knew, was already in the Malaysian reports, and the French investigation was not helped.
Now, what was in the Malaysian reports on the captain's home flight simulator?
The Royal Malaysia Police, RMP, seized the pilot in command's home flight simulator from his residence on the 15th of March 2014. They issued a forensic report, which is cited in the official Malaysian report, and that is dated the 19th of May, 2014. It documented more than 2,700 coordinates retrieved from separate file fragments, and most of them are default game coordinates. It was also discovered that there were 7 manually programmed waypoint coordinates that were, if you connect them together, would create a flight path from Kuala Lumpur to an area in the southern Indian Ocean, a flight path via the Andaman Sea. These coordinates were stored in the volume shadow information file and dated the 3rd of February 2014. And the function of this file was to save information when a computer is left idle for more than 15 minutes. Hence, the RMP forensic report, they say, could not determine if the waypoints came from one and the same simulation or separate simulation flights. We're showing a screenshot from the Malaysian report with these 7 waypoints.
So, Richard, was the simulation data deleted by the captain deliberately?
Well, that's an interesting question. The word deleted is not used in the official Malaysian report. The report concluded the simulator session had a route that led to the southern Indian Ocean. There is no evidence to suggest that the pilot had flown the simulator flight, and it cannot be established whether the simulator session is in any way related to the actual flight of MH370. Now, the Malaysian Inspector General of Police, a guy called Tan Sri Khalid Abu Bakar, publicly stated, and I quote, "Some data has been deleted from the simulator, and forensic work is being done to retrieve this data." And follow-up reports confirmed the FBI were involved in recovering these, and I quote, "deleted files," which included a simulated flight path to the southern Indian Ocean, which did later appear indirectly in the official report, but referred to simply as manually programmed coordinates. We're showing a screenshot of a snippet of one of the files recovered. And you can see from the screenshot, you need to know what you're doing when you try to analyze it. Now, Captain Sahari Shah had different versions of Microsoft Windows and different versions of Microsoft Flight Simulator. He also had an add-on from Phoenix Simulation Software for a Boeing 777-200LR long range, not the ER extended range of the actual flight. And this version had no virtual cockpit. And Victor Yunello and Yves Guillaume found that this add-on from PSS was only available on Flight Simulator 2004, and the Malaysian report got the Flight Simulator version wrong, because they say time and again it was Flight Simulator X, or number 10, FSX for short, and not FS 2004. A few analysts have replicated the software setup of Captain Sahari Shah with the same Windows version, the same Microsoft Flight Simulator version, and the same PSS Boeing 777 add-on. As of now, the specific add-on is no longer officially available, either for purchase or download. PSS ceased operations years ago, and their products have since become rare and unsupported. There is, however, for anyone who's interested, an add-on from PMDG, which offers a high fidelity Boeing 777 for the Microsoft flight simulator.
So, how close to the real thing is the simulator?
Well, very close. They call it total immersion. You can build a cockpit yourself at home, and I think you've got friends who've done that.
Mm.
And you can also use a virtual reality headset. Microsoft started back in 1982 with the first version. In 1996, it moved to Windows. In 2020, it moved to photorealistic scenery, real-time weather, and highly detailed aircraft models. So if you wanted, you could, for example, simulate a Boeing 737 new generation aircraft in the Poseidon P-8A livery with military style avionics, live commercial air traffic and ship traffic, and run your own search and rescue mission if you wanted to. Captain Sahari Shah had multiple screens, a yoke, rudder pedals, a throttle quadrant, a motion controller that moved the seat to pitch and turn like a real cockpit to simulate climbs, descents, and banks, just like a real plane. And Sahari's setup also included a center pedestal where the aircraft controls sit and an overhead panel. So very high fidelity setup.
Mm. Was the official Malaysian report a whitewash then or a cover up?
Well, don't think it was a whitewash, but it was certainly incomplete. There was only sparse information included in the official report. Both Malaysian and US officials have confirmed that the FBI was asked to help in recovering the from Captain Sahari Shah's home flight simulator. The Australian ATSB devotes a whole section in its final report to the pilot in command's flight simulator, but they also don't mention the FBI or its role in the investigation. And I quote, data from the pilot in command's home flight simulator was recovered and analyzed in March, April 2014. The information was provided to the ATSB on the 19th of April 2014 during the surface search. It was subsequently also analyzed for relevance to the underwater search. The simulated data was a partial reconstruction of a flight simulator session from 2nd of February 2014. It comprised 4 complete and 2 partial data captures of various aircraft and simulator parameters at discrete points during the simulation. And the ATSB also note on the day the simulation was conducted, the pilot in command was on a rostered day leave. They also note that on the 4th of February 2014, the PIC was rostered to fly from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. The first 3 data points recovered from the simulator were consistent with a route from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah. We know from the Microsoft documentation what data should be available. There are almost 1,000 data items for each waypoint file, and we have around 200 data items per waypoint file. So the complete data sets have not been published, nor have they been leaked. And we're showing you a screenshot of the Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft parameters. That's only a small selection of all the data that's available.
Mm. So, Richard, what evidence is there that the authorities were taking the disappearance of MH370 seriously?
Well, 26 countries were involved in the search for MH370 and spent over $300 million. So that's quite serious. The overall scale of that operation, the total cost of that operation, and the international scope of that operation, I think, provide quite strong evidence that the authorities took the disappearance of MH370 very seriously. Malaysia has been accused of making mistakes, of miscommunication, and a lack of transparency. However, Malaysian Airlines introduced a new rule 19 days after the disappearance of MH370 on the 27th of March by implementing a policy requiring that two crew members be present in the cockpit at all times. Other airlines only introduced the two-person cockpit rule a year later after the German wings disaster. Many airlines have since abandoned the rule as impractical and unworkable, but Malaysian Airlines were prompt in bringing in that new rule, and that is now no longer mandatory for any airline. And Interpol reported that two passengers traveled on stolen passports and that no checks had been made whether their passports were valid. Both passports were in the Interpol stolen and lost travel documents database. So if a check had been made, they would have flagged up on that check. And the Secretary General of Interpol, Ronald Noble, said, in a quote, "This is a situation we had hoped never to see. For years, Interpol has asked why should countries wait for a tragedy to put prudent security measures in place at borders and boarding gates."
Mm. So, has anything more come to light about what the FBI knew about MH370?
Yep. The ATSB has been most helpful. Analysts, including the IG, myself, and others, have received more data, and we've shared our findings. I mentioned in a previous episode the report by Victor Yunello and Yves Guillaume, but there are several other experts, including Captain Mike Glynn, Mick Gilbert, Bill Tracy, and others who have analyzed the simulator data in depth and in detail. We now realize the type of file recovered is a temporary file that Microsoft Flight Simulator creates and subsequently automatically deletes. These temporary files are created when the simulator is paused to make certain changes, for example, to load or jettison fuel, or if you want to drag the aircraft in a fast forward mode to save time. It seems quite possible the user did not realize these temporary files were created, then auto-deleted. Case files would have actually been better because they contain more data. Instead, we have auto-deleted Microsoft Flight Simulator temporary files, which only contain the Microsoft portion of the data and not the more complete add-on PS 777 file details. And we're showing a screenshot from the Victor Yunello and Yves Guillaume report with the table of key data that they found and recovered.
So, Richard, what is your conclusion?
Well, I haven't come to a conclusion yet. And to quote the FBI, the investigation is still ongoing, not just with
Mm,
the FBI, but with the experts. Whether the flight originally targeted for a hijacking and diversion was the flight to Amsterdam or the flight to Jeddah or the flight to Beijing is speculation. The Amsterdam flight had the most fuel, but it also had two complete sets of flight crew. The Jeddah flight had more fuel than the Beijing flight, but also additional flight crew. The Beijing flight had sufficient fuel to get to the southern Indian Ocean and only had one other flight crew member and a junior flight crew member still on the final training run. So, what is not speculation is that the flight simulator data leaked in the Malaysian RMP police report and referenced in the official report is not the whole truth. It has meanwhile become apparent that the FBI has more data than the data that has either been published or leaked. We know the full data set from Microsoft Flight Simulator and the particular version and the add-on used by Captain Sahari Shah. And we know what data portion has been made public, either officially or leaked. And we have received written and verbal confirmation that there is additional information out there. In my view, the conclusion of the Malaysian report that it cannot be established that the home flight simulator data is, and I quote, in any way related to the actual flight of MH370 is premature and misleading, if only because the FBI says the case is still ongoing.
yes, it's a fairly powerful thing for the FBI to say the case is still ongoing. There's clearly more to it than we currently know.
Indeed, there is.
Mm, yeah, very sobering um, report, Richard. It certainly will raise questions amongst the viewers, and we do stress to the viewers, please keep your comments respectful. This is a very sensitive subject, and what we've striven to do is simply state what is known. And, as per the FBI saying, the case is still ongoing. Correct, Richard?
Yeah, and I think we're happy to take any questions, receive any comments from viewers, and we will do our best to answer those. But due to the sensitive nature, there may be some things that we cannot say.
So tomorrow, viewers, we're going to do the plane guys, the Transair Flight 810, the 737 cargo aircraft that ditched off Honolulu. And then on Monday, we're going to answer your questions from this particular episode. So thank you for viewing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking us, and thank you for the comments. We really do appreciate them very much. And of course, the support. And thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.